Well, hello everyone. It's lunchtime on day two of the first test in Nagpur, and this is Cricket Unfiltered's first live at lunch for this Border Gavaskar series. I'm Menas, of course, host of the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm joined by my co-host Paul Dennett. Paul, in the first session today, India lost 2 wickets. They scored, I think, 74 runs. What did you make of the first session?
Uh, India can be very happy. They just pressed home their advantage. Look, we should preface this by saying Australia could come out and take 7 for 20 after lunch, and everything we're going to say now will look really silly. So if that happens, then I'll be happy to look silly. At the moment, it's like a third round Wimbledon match between Federer and the number 29 seed. The number 29 seed's played some good shots, entertained the crowd, and done well. But at the end, it just feels like it's going to be 6-3, 6-2, 6-3, doesn't it?
Well, this is the first fine of the Live at Lunch series for bringing in a tennis analogy to our analysis. But no, I get what you're saying. I say, Australia's, they're scrappy underdogs in this contest, sort of nipping at India's heels. I mean, I thought Australia bowled well this morning. I thought they bowled much better than they did in the last session last night. So I guess that's a positive. Do you agree with that?
I do. I thought that the kind of bowling that Scott Boland bowled today was kind of in line with what a bit of the talk had been before the series, that we want to really keep control over the run rate, try to strangle the scoring. And, his figures, I don't know what they exactly are, but he's going at barely 1 and over. Hasn't got any wickets yet, but he's bowled really nicely. And I think that's a blueprint for how the Australian fast bowlers can bowl. I thought Cummins bowled a lot better today. What has disappointed me about the bowling, I don't agree with this leg stump line and bowling around the wicket and consistently bowling at leg stump. I know that Todd Murphy got Pujara out with that ball outside leg stump, but that's Pujara's probably in the dressing room right now smashing his bat. Not that he looks like the kind of bloke that does smash his bat, but if he was, he wouldn't be very happy with that dismissal. There just hasn't been quite enough of an attack of where the ball is kind of pitching outside off and turning back to hit the top of the off stump. I've been a little bit disappointed by that, but I think, Todd Murphy, 3 wickets on debut, going really well. Lyon, he's bowling okay, but a little bit underwhelming so far, I suppose.
Yeah, so the figures at the moment, Scott Boland, 9 overs, none for 7. So that's just outstanding stuff. That's an economy rate of 0.77. Nathan Lyon, 20 overs, none for 66. Pat Cummins, 8 overs, none for 41. Going at over 5 and over. So that's pretty ugly reading for the skipper and leader of the attack. And Todd Murphy, 15 overs, 3 for 35. So this morning, Murphy got Ravi Ashwin out LBW. And Murphy was bowling around the wicket, angling it at the right-hander's pads. And as soon as it hit Ravi, I was like, that's plumb LBW. And the umpire just kept his hands glued to his side. So Australia used their DRS and we got the decision. But, good ball from Murphy. What did you think of that dismissal?
Yeah, we needed it. Ashton was batting pretty well. I probably would have given it not out as well live. Maybe you're a better umpire than me. I just felt like I couldn't blame the umpire for giving that not out. It felt like it might have been, didn't look quite right. But yeah, obviously on review, a bit like Kawaja's actually. On review, it was absolutely plumb. So all hail DRS.
No, yeah. And then you spoke about Pujara sort of sweeping at one on the leg stump, just sort of top edging it to 45. And Murphy's picked up all 3 wickets so far. Just a phenomenal start for him in his Test career to get the first 3 wickets. But I mean, this is what looms on Australia's horizon. I mean, Australian fans might want this lunch to go on forever because Virat Kohli is not out on 12. He's hit 2 boundaries. He looks to be middling them. Sharma just continues on his 85 not out off 142 balls. He looks in imperious form. And those two look like they're, set for a pretty, big session after lunch.
I actually forgot that Virat Kohli was in the side, which is going to sound like I'm an idiot. But I've been sort of thinking, yeah, they've got a slight question mark maybe over some of the middle order. And when that wicket fell, I thought, okay, we could be deep in here. And then Kohli walked out. I'd only forgot he existed for like 1 second. But it reminds me of that story of when Gary Sobers got a century, had stomach cramps, had to retire hurt, and then came back out, and it was like something like, in the West Indies are 5 for 550, and out comes Gary Sobers to bat. It was not quite as bad as that, but I thought, oh yeah, I forgot about Virat Kohli. Yeah, this is, he exists. They showed his record up against Lyon, and he's averaging close to 60 against Lyon in Test match cricket, and he's attacking him right from the start. The worry for Australia is that this is going to be the perfect situation for the Indian middle order of players that like to give the ball a bit of a thump. Surya Kumar Yadav and Jadeja. There's going to be some aggressive, confident batting, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm so excited about Surya Kumar's Yadav's Test debut and what he'll do. Will he go out there and just play his T20 game and take the Aussies on? I don't know if he plays a little bit more conservatively in red ball cricket. And then you've got the keeper, Barat, on debut, and then Jadeja, Patel. So you're right, a lot of batting for India to come, and it could be sort of, once they get in the lead, they could just go off. And for those watching live on YouTube, if you want to ask any questions, put them in the YouTube chat. If you're on Twitter, we can't see those comments, but if you're watching on YouTube, we'll be answering questions in a minute. But yeah, I echo those, Paul. I mean, this is set up, India gets in the lead and then they put the foot on the throat this afternoon. And I am concerned about Lyon, 20 overs, none for 66. It's not that he's bowling badly, but they're scoring freely. He doesn't really look like taking a wicket. And compared to Murphy, Murphy's out bowling him at the moment. So, that is concerning. This could get ugly this afternoon.
It shows how quickly things can change as well. Now, again, saying Lyon might come out this afternoon and take a bag full of wickets. But as things stand, if you were to parlay this forward and say, just assume Australia lose this Test match, Lyon continues to be a little bit underwhelming and Murphy continues to bowl well. Lyon, from being one of the first players picked in the Australian side, his position could actually even come under pressure as soon as the second Test match.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, Murphy's making a real ploy to be Australia's number one spinner. And really big afternoon for all concerned. Just before we sort of answer some questions and sort of talk a bit more about today's action, for those that are listening to our daily wraps, our podcast only daily wraps, subscribe to Cricket Unfiltered on all podcast apps to get them. We discussed a couple of things from yesterday. The first one was we discussed Travis Head's omission. And, I've been sort of watching a lot of the media reports today, and a lot of the former players, the pundits, have been sort of left scratching their heads. Michael Clarke, Ian Healy, just universally, there's a lot of people wondering why they dropped the number 4 Test batsman. Even Steve Waugh, who's not normally one to tweet out his opinions, put something on Instagram to the effect, of scratching his head as well. So sort of almost 24 hours after, how do you sort of look back on the decision?
Well, apparently, we always talk about Western Australia seceding. I think South Australia is about to secede from the country at the moment. They're pretty angry over there in Adelaide. If he was playing, you would have thrown him the ball this morning already. Like, apart from anything else, I think that his style of bowling on this pitch, I can't really necessarily put it into words, but I think he'd be a handy bowler on this pitch. And that's what we said yesterday, that I can see why, given he has struggled in subcontinental conditions with the bat, and particularly, as you pointed out, if he hasn't looked so good in the nets, then there could come that question over his batting. But it's not as though we've got, Michael Clarke who's replaced him. So I think it was a mistake. And I think that right now, definitely his bowling would have been handy. And, his batting, his form has been absolutely sublime. So a lot of people said he earned the right to have at least one go at Indian conditions. And the thing is going to be interesting is that if they bring him back for the second Test match, then they're going to look like idiots. But they might have no choice.
Yeah, Chad Sayers, the South Australian player, former Australian Test player, I think tweeted out something about, it's an effing disgrace that Head was dropped. So you're right, South Australia may succeed, or, certainly, if I was George Bailey or Tony Donamate, I wouldn't be flying through Adelaide anytime soon.
Well, they only get a Test representative every 15 or 20 years or so they cling on to them. I know that's wrong. But I found it amusing to say.
Sorry to all the South Australians. Normally it's me offending various states, people from around the country. Look, I'm tending to sort of agree with the popular opinion that, mate, you should have probably given Head the start in this series. And what does it do for his confidence now if you're dropping him and then you have to bring him back? You're sort of saying, oh, we think you can't play on these pitches. Oh, but now we need you, so we'll bring you back in. I think you sort of, sometimes when you get a little bit clever with these selections, you can get yourself in a corner. And anyway, I feel sorry for him. And I think what should have got him over the line is his bowling. If you're sort of putting Head and Renshaw up against each other. But yeah, they probably sort of got thinking, and they're going, okay, Renshaw's the incumbent. He's good on spin. Oh, but Hanscom's a right-hander, which we need. And before you know it, Head's left out. And the other thing that happened overnight was, so we discussed briefly the footage of Jadeja being given something by Siraj and then putting it on the ball or putting it on his hand or whatever it was. And I put out a video on Twitter, and it's been shared. And look, the Indian fans are really passionate about this. Most of them mentioned the sandpaper thing when responding. Most of them are upset. I'm not accusing India of anything, but the match referee did ask for clarification on what happened. I don't know if there's anything more going to come from that, but the explanation given was that Jadeja was given some sort of ointment, some pain relieving ointment. But the fact is, he had the ball in his hand when he was applying the ointment to his. He had the ball in the same hand as he was applying the ointment to, which is not right. All cricketers universally have said, if something like that's happening, you should give the ball to the umpire, or you need to stand next to the umpire and just show them what you're doing. You see it all the time. So if they need to do anything near the ball, they do it in front of the umpire. So I think you could say whether India were cheating or doing anything untoward, I'm not sure about that, but they certainly didn't handle that well.
I'm sure that the Indian fans, if the same footage was of an Australian player, would be equally defending the player.
Yeah, sure. And so, I mean, I just think there was certainly, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be putting cream on your hand. You can't tell me if you're not putting cream on your hand with the ball in your hand, it wouldn't be easy to put a bit on the ball. Or and there is something called grippo, and Gab was talking about it, and baseball pitchers use a very similar thing. And I'm not even sure that's legal, because you're putting an artificial substance on your hands to spin the ball more. Pitchers aren't really allowed to use it in baseball, and they're only allowed to use a little bit of it. So I don't know. It's a complicated one, but it doesn't look great. Anyway, so that's it. It's
sorry, you wanted more from me on that. I haven't studied it today in detail. I'm sorry. I've had other things, and it's just I don't want to speak without having looked at it in detail. But what you said sounds reasonable. And apologies that I can't add to the discussion.
No. The flavor of, I had to look to give you. I had to turn off the notifications on my Twitter because I was just getting so many from this video that went up, and I would just some people have said that the Australians are quick to whinge or whatever. And the Australians always like to point the finger. And what I would say to the Indian fans is the match referee's looking at it. So there's something there. You can say you can say about Sandpaper Gate all you like. I'm not saying what we did was wrong, and I don't think the Indians are doing anything outrageous. Ball management goes on in world cricket, but that's something. He's putting something on his fingers and he's spinning the ball a long way. It is questionable.
Look, I mean, Menners sometimes plays the pantomime villain, having a go at England and other countries, but he's very fair. And have a listen to our. If you're new to the podcast, have a listen to the podcast that we did immediately after Sandpaper Gate. Have a listen to the 3 or 4 that we did immediately after. We absolutely gave it to the Australians in a way, like we were fired up. Menners he's just being objective and calling it as he sees it. There's no bias there. He sometimes plays the part of being biased, but when it comes down to it for serious analysis, he gives his honest opinion.
Yeah, and look, I don't like the English. That's not a part of my thing. I really like the Indians, and I love the Indian passion for cricket, and I love the fact that they're jumping on and defending their team, and I get that sort of blind passion. All right, so it's lunchtime on day 2. India, India a long way ahead. I guess Australia's. I guess the only glimmer of hope for Australia, if they get through this partnership, they've got sort of 2 Test debutants, and then they're sort of into the all-rounders and the tail. Maybe they could limit the lead to sort of under 100. And if they could do that, give themselves just an outside chance at setting India something in the 4th innings. I mean, that's, I guess, the only thing keeping them in the game is that they're sort of, India have got to bat last, and, Australia could set them something.
Yeah, this is where Test cricket does confound the mind. Every instinct is that Australia is going to get hammered in this game, and they probably will. But we've all seen games where you just couldn't give the side that's losing any hope, and they come around and win it. It's part of the joy of Test cricket. It's the Australia's chances are starting to recede, but they're not gone yet. Anything could still happen, which is exciting. As I said in the podcast last night, it doesn't feel like there's going to be a miraculous come from behind victory, but you just never know.
Yeah, and just back on the Indian controversy. I mean, Paul and I are desperate to make it to India for in any capacity as the Cricket Unfiltered podcast,
Yes.
and we'll do anything to get there. So, I'm willing to just forget this whole thing if we can get there for the 50 over World Cup this year. So, sponsors in India, as far as I'm concerned, what is a bit of grippo on a cricket ball, really? When you look at the sort of big picture. So Zarp 18 has said he should be fined, and that's it. No need to make conspiracy theories about Grippo. Well, Zarp saying Jadeja should be fined. I've had a lot of messages from people wondering, does the Indian team sometimes get favourable treatment because of the way the ICC relies on them? Would another country have maybe been raked over the coals a bit more? I don't know. But that they did ask the question, so maybe Jadeja will be fined at the end of this match. We'll see.
In terms of favourable treatment, I mean, I think our answer to that touches back to what you said a few minutes ago. If we're looking for sponsorship, then our answer is going to be very different.
Yes, and look, I'm willing to just, as I said, forget about the whole thing. I mean, give Jadeja man of the match as far as I'm concerned. You give him player of the series now.
He's going to get man of the match on his own merits, by the way, as well.
Now, Chris Jenkins, words that have never been used before. Menas had the patience of a saint, having read all the replies to his Jadeja video tweet. Well, I'm not going to get into a slangy match with people about Sandpapergate and all that stuff. Martin Lawrence, even if Australia is 50 to 70 behind, they will struggle. And I think Gav said something else, even if Australia is something similar, even if Australia is like 100 behind, that means we need to make 200 plus in the next innings to make India sort of chase something decent. So it's a good point.
Here's a question for you on that, Menas. What would you accept right now as the deficit? If they said to you, Australia could be 50 to 70 behind, I'd snap your arm off and say, absolutely, I'll cop that. I presume you would as well. How far behind would you have to say before you say, no, I'll let things play out as they are?
I mean, I'd take, anything up to sort of 150, 200 behind at the moment.
Yeah.
Because, I think India looking good for 500 and, 300 plus lead and an innings victory. That's sort of the way I see the game going.
I would take 200 behind. And that doesn't please me to say that, but I think I would take 200.
Where's your mama? He said our best test batter after Pant is Jadeja. Well, certainly one of their most exciting test batters.
Go back and listen to the show last night, Where's Your Mama? And I declared Jadeja the best Indian cricketer of all time, and I stand by that.
Darshan SC. Todd Murphy is an excellent pick in hindsight. His bowling style suits Indian pitches better. Yeah, I mean, we were criticising them for, not picking head, but, they've taken a gamble on Murphy. And I have to say, if you're just putting up what sort of Agar did at the SCG and Murphy did here, just on the way they're bowling, Murphy to me looks like a better red ball bowler, finger spinner than Agar. That simple.
Oh, I think he is. It's just it would have been really interesting to see what Agar could have done in these conditions, and of course his batting is strong as well. The thing about these series is that if Australia do lose this match, then some weird and funky selections could occur. By the end of the series, it could be Murphy and Agar as our first choice spinners. Who knows? Anything's possible.
And Where's Your Mum was asked, what could Nathan Lyon do better? Yeah, well,
I think he should. I think he can go over the wicket, and I think he should have a close infielder on the offside and not just the leg side. And I think he's possibly bowling a little bit too quickly. I'm hesitant to be too prescriptive with regards to those sorts of things because I'm not an expert. But I just think that, and also it is only a small sample size yet. He's only bowled a few overs. He may well come good.
So there were lots of great comments. It's great to have everybody watching live and commenting. So that's it for, I guess, live at lunch on day 2 of the Nagpur test. Paul and I are going to be trying to do these as often as we can. They won't happen, every day, but we'll try and jump on, once or twice a test and look at the action. I know tomorrow I'm doing some Shield commentary, so we won't be able to go live tomorrow, but we still are doing our daily wraps every night, our podcast wrap of the action. We record them pretty soon after the day's play, so you're going to get our fresh reactions every day. So subscribe to Cricket Unfiltered on your favorite podcast app. Paul, anything before we sign off?
No, other than I think with all the controversy, we haven't touched on exactly our own thoughts on the pitch, but so far I think it's a pretty good pitch.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if Australia got a little bit spooked by the pitch. I was listening to a podcast today, and they're over there. I think it was Pete and Gideon, and they were saying that they did see the BCCI representatives looking at the pitch the day before, and maybe just saying, "Look, we can't be this obvious about being, we can certainly have a home ground advantage, but let's not go to the lengths of sort of doctoring one side of the wicket." And I think more to the point, it's like every other Indian tour. Australia made it look like a minefield, and India are out there and it looks like a decent batting pitch.
I don't think the Australians have been spooked by the pitch. I don't think they complain about the pitch themselves. I think it's just come down to the fact that unfortunately, so far, India have been better at batting and bowling at cricket, basically, than Australia.
Yep, that's it. You nailed it before when you brought up that great tennis analogy. All right, well, Paul, enjoy the rest of the match. Listeners, enjoy the rest of the day. 2 massive sessions. And Paul, I'll speak to you after play.
See you, everyone.